Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Boston MPO Unified Planning Work Program Committee meeting. My name is Derek Cravat from the Office of Transportation Planning at MassDOT, representing MassDOT Planning here, chairing committee today. We'll go ahead and get started with the meeting notices and guidelines. First, the notice of non-discrimination, which reads that you're invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status or background. The accessibility statement reads that this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities and that Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. And if you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in the meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Abby Katrumbis of MPO staff at acutrUmbes@ctps.org, by phone at 857-702-3682 or via the chat box. The meeting guidelines state that all participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After the roll call, you may mute and unmute yourselves, but always remain muted unless actively speaking. And to participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by either clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar, and the chair will then call on participants. And if you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. We will go into our first agenda item, which is introductions. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Do we have anyone from MAPC? Don't see anyone. We'll move on to Town of Arlington, City of Boston, City of Framingham. Do we have Town of Wrentham? City of Newton?
Yes. David Kozis representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller, City of Newton.
Great. Town of Norwood?
Hi, Tom O'Rourke from the Town of Norwood in the Trick subregion.
Great. City of Somerville? And the Regional Transportation Advisory Council?
Leonard Diggins Advisory Council here.
And the MBTA Advisory Board?
Brian Kane, present.
All right, thank you, everyone. So it looks like we have 2, 3, 4, 5 members present. I believe, does that constitute a quorum?
I'm
struggling to
I think 5 is a quorum, but I'll defer to Annette just to confirm. I believe quorum is 5.
So as well.
All right, great. We will proceed with that then. We'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone present that would like to make a public comment at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is our big action item here today to look at the draft fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program and recommend to the MPO to release this for comment period. So I'll turn it over to Srilekha.
Thank you, Derek. I'm actually going to ask Tayan to jump in here. I think she is going to provide a bit of an introduction for my presentation.
Thanks. Thanks, Srilekha, and hello, everyone. And please excuse my voice. I'm on a long recovery cycle from losing my voice last week after an illness, so I know I sound a little bit strange. But before Srilekha dives into the details of our draft federal fiscal year 25 UPWP that we're going to ask you to recommend to the board to release for public review, I'd like to provide a bit of strategic context and just a little bit of an overview before, again, she dives into the details on this. So I have 2 sort of areas to highlight. One is to update you very briefly on the shift and how we're working to, how we're shifting and how we capture our work in the UPWP. And that involves how we're reworking the framing and the content over the last few years and how that's kind of started to become percolated into the document itself. And then therefore the draft, it captures that content as it's been evolving. But the draft, as you see, it doesn't yet include quite the level of editorial review and graphic design elements that you're used to seeing in the final version. So just kind of acknowledging that now and saying that those two aspects will be complete for the final document as it was in the last year's process as well. So, but on the first item, I think it's just worth making sure we're saying it out front with this group. I'd like to elaborate on how we're really shifting into this multi-year programmatic work planning. And when I say programmatic or programs, I'm talking about what are actually the majority of the line items that you'll see in the UPWP, things like the equity program, the freight program, the bicycle and pedestrian program, our data program, the model development program, and many, many others. And for that work, our programmatic work that carries on year over year, our goal is to create multi-year visions for every one of those programs and coordinate those visions at the leadership level to ensure that what we are doing through the UPWP is investing federal dollars in support of that larger, longer term vision that's embedded in the long range plan for the MPO. So what that means for us and staff in terms of how they're thinking about their work, as well as what you're seeing and how it's described in the UPWP, is that we're heading away from this kind of culture perspective of thinking about 1 year at a time, kind of descriptions of our work, to really looking out for multiple years and having that be the basis of our framework, and then using the annual UPWP cycle to implement elements of that plan each year. So I know that's not all completely visible to you all, but that's something that we're really working hard to shift internally for. And what it does is it requires a level of collaboration and coordination at all levels internally. And it is taking us, I think, a very positive amount of time to really build that into the process of the development of the UPWP, but also the process of the agency as a whole. So related to the second item and the UPWP itself, what it means is that there's a reasonable amount of not only rethinking, but also rewriting of the content. And so I hope you can start to see that evolution happening in what you're seeing in the document. And it also means that we've been really focusing on that content and how that rewriting is happening before we've been completing the editorial and graphics work. And so that's been affecting a little bit of our workflow these last few years. I hope what you've also been seeing is a rebalancing of the narrative as a whole to better reflect the level of effort, the balance of the level of effort that we engage in as a whole as staff on the programmatic work itself, relative to the discrete studies, which has long been, a very important and kind of enthusiastic focus of this UPWP committee. The discrete studies are very important and have a very important role in what we do. They also still represent a relatively small percentage of our work in a year and are by definition constrained to this sort of 1 year framework because they need to be completed in a year with a deliverable within that year. So just kind of being a little bit more clear about the value of those particular studies, but also the value of this multi-year ongoing work that we have in our programs and trying to better elaborate those throughout the UPWP. So I just wanted to set that strategic kind of context and framework first, because I know that our conversations have been evolving over the last few years. And then again, also acknowledging that the document still has a bit of editorial and graphics work to do to get it into the final version. And then I can just pause there if you'd like, Derek and others, if you have any more questions in this area. And if not, of course, happy to move on to the core content and Sri Lanka as part of the meeting as well. So let me know what you'd like to do and happy to talk.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Tegan. Any questions on that for Tegan? I don't see any, but I think it's a great idea. I like the idea of vision statements and kind of looking multi-year, especially for some of those recurring programs. So certainly in favor of that and looking forward to kind of reviewing the document with that context. I think it's helpful to understand that that's kind of the approach taken this year. So
Great.
Thanks, Tegan. And yeah, turn it back
Great.
over to Sri Lanka for the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And like Tegan, I also apologize for my voice. Allergy season is definitely here in Boston. Next slide, please. So I have a short presentation today where I'll be walking you all through the federal fiscal year 2025 UPWP. At the end of this presentation, I will request that you vote to move this draft to the MPO board, where I will request that it would be released for a 21-day public comment period. This UPWP programs about $7.5 million between CTPS and MAPC, and across 18 programs supporting the MPO and 3C processes, 2 technical assistance programs, and 3 discrete studies. In federal fiscal year 2024, we received about $7.1 million in funding, so we are working with a relatively minimal increase as compared to the previous fiscal year. What this means is that nearly all programs are level funded or close to level funded in comparison to FFY 2024. As in previous years, the overall strategy with UPWP is to maintain our investments in the MPO's ongoing programs to ensure staff's ability to respond quickly to evolving planning needs throughout the year. And as we dive more into our multi-year planning, this will again be reflected in the document. Next slide, please. This UPWP also funds 3 discrete studies, Blue Bikes and MBT connections at $60,000, roadway pricing at $50,000, and a study on decarbonizing the freight sector at $40,000. Thank you all so much for your input and guidance in choosing these studies. We have always really appreciated your input when we're making these decisions. Next slide, please. So today I am requesting that this committee vote to move this draft document to the MPO board to request a release for a 21-day public comment period. This would begin on May 17th and end on June 7th. I will come back to this committee on June 13th to present the final document and request your endorsement, and finally request endorsement from the MPO board on June 20th. So with that, I just want to once again thank you all for your support through this process. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will turn it back to the chair.
Great, thanks, Shalika. Are there any questions?
Trying to raise my hand.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Len.
So the first question is a very light question, you know, so on the top page of the draft, where is that top half picture from? It's got to be somewhere in the MPO region, right? So where's it from?
It is. Let me.
Okay, you don't know. That's fine. That's fine. I looked at it.
I'm
First,
not
like,
sure off the top of my head.
yeah, like where am I? You know, and then I saw the bottom half. It's like, oh, there I am. I mean, so it's like, so that's it. The second is excuse me, request me to make it so much easier for me to take notes on this in order to comment on it. I don't see any designation of chapters. I don't know if this is like the formatting you're going to do. I mean, hopefully you're going to do this formatting in the draft. That's going to be that we're going to release to the public so that the public has so it's easy for the public to navigate. You know, and also just need some pagination. Unique pagination, for the pages. As it's just hard to refer to any location in the document without the pagination. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick the pagination, but it'd also be nice to have some table of contents with hyperlinks to the relevant sections, because like there are appendices, but it's just hard to know what's in the document without a table of contents. So I will be at some point maybe make a motion contingent upon those changes. To release it to the MPO board. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Did you want to say something, Shalika?
Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for your comments, Len. Yes, as this is a draft, we were aware that we were not able to really put in some of those formatting elements that usually we have. But for the version that is posted for next week's board meeting, the document has been put into our usual graphics layout with hyperlink table of contents and with accurate pagination for like throughout the document. But yes, thank you for raising that. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it too. So that's it.
Excellent. Julia?
Yeah, hi everyone. this is just a comment regarding the three projects that were selected, or sorry, studies selected. I don't know if there's like a place to put an addendum or a note when this is presented to the board, but and I apologize for not recognizing this sooner when we did the voting on this, but MAPC is involved in some contracting very similar with the city of Boston, similar to that study around e-cargo bike for deliveries. And it we're in touch with Rona to make sure we're not overlapping or duplicating efforts. But in case that comes up in the board meeting, it might be good to have a note that MAPC and CTPS are coordinating on these dual research efforts to make sure that they are complementary and not duplicative. I mean, it's a huge emerging area of like freight and e-cargo bike deliveries, and I think there's room for both. But in case people are concerned of like, hey, isn't MAPC already doing this with the city of Boston? Why are we studying this? Yes, we are, and here's how that plays out. And obviously, Eric will be there to speak to it as well.
Great. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, just and on that too, I don't know if the scope for this one would be a bit larger and include other municipalities. Like, look, if as they're interested, right, like places where it might make sense to look at e-cargo bikes, like some of the inner core communities, probably beyond Boston too. Is it fair to say that that's part of the scope, and maybe it could be presented in that way too if it's relevant?
Yeah, for this study.
So
yeah.
Right, for this the UPWP study. Yeah.
yeah, so for this study, the description for this work will be found in chapter 4, and I believe that the project is going to look beyond just the city of Boston and look more at inner core communities. I'm sorry. But and also thank you, Julia, for that note. If it does come up, I can speak to CTPS and MAPC's coordination on this work.
Right. And yeah, maybe in the final version, like the write-up could also include a reference to that, and just to note that the work in the city of Boston will of course be consistent with and not duplicative of the already ongoing work. So it's a good.
Yes,
thing to make sure to
the
know.
Boston
Yeah.
Delivers program, and our research has
Oh,
been
great.
extracting lessons learned from that. So as long as we can see that these are sequential and building off of one another to a more regional scale.
Yep.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Julia. Any other comments or questions? Great. I don't see any. So Len, I know you said you were able to make a motion. So with those qualifications, so if you want to.
Yeah. It
that.
seems like that will be satisfied. So I'll be happy to make a motion to present this to the board, the MPO board, in petition of release to the public for 21-day comment period.
Great. Is there a second?
I can second that, David Kozas.
All right. Thank you, David. Thank you, Len. Motion having been made and seconded, I'll call the roll. Julia Wallers.
Sorry, I put the window behind and couldn't get my mute button. Julia Wallers,
no
yes.
Great, thank you. I see Rachel Benson's joined too. Rachel.
Yes, hi. Sorry I was late.
Great. Oh, no,
Yes,
no
hi.
problem at all. Thank you. Thank you. David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
great, and Mass.OTP votes yes as well. So thank you for all the work went into the draft, and we'll consider that unanimous for the MPO to consider voting out at the meeting next week. So great. Well, with that, we can move on to members' items. Does anyone have any items they'd like to discuss? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to next meeting. Have a note here that the next meeting is June 13th to present the final UPWP for endorsement. Anything else to add there, Srileka, or anyone else?
Nope. So yeah, at that meeting, we'll be presenting the final document, which will also include any comment letters we received during our public comment period. So I'll provide an overview of those as well ahead of requesting your endorsement.
Great, sounds good. All right, any other business? All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion and second to adjourn.
Taking some motions to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All right, without objection, I'd say we're adjourned. So thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next week at the MPO
And
meeting.
easy.
Have a great day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
yeah.
Nice.
Take care.
We're back.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye all.